Well, good morning. Thanks everyone for being here. Thank you, Dar and Kevin, for setting all this up, everything like that. So let me just do a brief introduction. My name's Chris Phillips. I'm the Vice President of the Tempe Officers Association. Been in law enforcement for 26 years. Prior to that, I was a firefighter for 3 years with Virginia Beach Fire Department, and I also served in the military. Kind of changed paths, moved family and everything like that, joined into law enforcement, trying to stay connected. And for background for the TOA is established, recognized by the city of Tempe to recognize all the police officers, police sergeants. We also represent detention sergeants. And for a brief period, we were representing the police lieutenants. So really what I'm here to talk to you guys about is the labor association's role in officer wellness. And the biggest thing that we do is, we build those perfect relationships, or at least we try to. So we're very active in the TOA to build relationships with the city, state leadership, other organizations, to find blind spots and barriers to get care and break those down as best we can. To stay connected with our officers, we purposely have board members representing all fields. So we have board members that are in investigations. I stay in patrol. Our president is on full release. I'm technically on full release, but I also try to, stay out in the street as much as possible. We have special investigations, board members, and we sit on every panel that affects officers' pay benefits, like for EAP contracts, the health benefits. We have a six-sided partnership with the city, which is all labor union associations in the city. And this all kind of goes right back to retention, hiring, recruiting, and everything like that that affects that mental health. So we've tried to identify everywhere where it can possibly impact financial, staffing, stress levels, all those type of things that can impact our members. And it's just building those relationships. So we also strive to maintain those relationships with our community leaders and businesses that can provide charity work and foster cooperation with civic issues that are impacting our members. We've set up a TOA Gives, which is a nonprofit charity that is really just designed to help our benefits, our members, where there's short or there's gaps. So other key areas that we work in is, the establishing protocols and for critical incidents prior to them actually happening, and also during investigations. Worst cases, a member comes and needs some sort of mental health or substance abuse, or there's a critical incident, and we're trying to reinvent the wheel at each incident. So what we've tried to do, along with our wellness coordinator and the city, is set up policies and procedures to have those things in place and have a voice in those, to have everything set up just so it relieves that stress. We work with IA investigations, internal affairs investigations, representing the officers to reduce that stress level of sitting in it by themselves. We've negotiated and expanded the Officer Bill of Rights, Title 39 in ARS, to include timelines that the investigation has to be completed in. Again, just reducing that stress for how long the investigation may hold over an officer. Paying benefits, obviously, it's a big thing for financial. It also helps the officers feel like they're valued and being supported by the city. With TOA's negotiated a $50,000 annual budget that's provided from the city directly to the TOA. What this is used is for anonymous mental health treatment for members and their family. So if they choose not to use EAP or healthcare insurance for whatever, either trust issues or financial issues, they can come directly to the TOA. So again, that's just another effort to reduce the barrier to seeking help and getting that assistance for people who are needing it. We've negotiated on-duty wellness time. So now officers can, towards the end of their shift, come in, work out, again, lowering those hormones in their system, make their transition back to their family life, better home life, and reduce that stress. It's proven that exercises reduces the stress that we all build up while we're out on the street, just from that high alert level. So again, it's just a focus, try to get officers time to, to go work out, meditate, whatever it is that they need. So we're still working on, we have the time built in. Now it's just implementing how does it actually work? So it's a growing process, but it's something that we're definitely working on. TOA is purchased through funding from nonprofits, from our own internal sources, fitness equipment through the city. We've negotiated annual physical fitness bonuses paid by the city. So the officer goes and passes a POPET annually, and they get paid a $250 stipend. I mean, a bonus. This, in theory, what we hoped it for was to purchase maybe an annual membership, like an EOS or something one of those. Again, stressing that physical fitness. The TOA and other labor associations, obviously, they provide legal coverage for critical incidents. So they have criminal defense, um, representation in case they're involved in a critical incident. But also we provide an in-house attorney for wills, assistance with estate planning, and all those things. So now kind of remove that pressure or that stress of, what happens to my family if, we all, when we're 21, young age, we're not thinking about worst case scenario, but the TOA is trying to provide that so that can be planned. So again, if something does tragically happen, there's support and there's already things in place. We've also developed scholarships for dependents, and at childbirth, we set up a 529 plan. Again, it's just kind of reducing that stress level and also making them feel, valued. When little history with the TOA, when we first started in 97, we had a very low membership and it grew steadily, but then kind of stagnated around 60, 65%. And about 9 years ago, board had a radical transition and we changed. And now we're enjoying about a 98 to 99% membership. But again, it's really about building those relationships and being proactive instead of just reactive. We're completely embedded with our wellness coordinator, the peer support, the crisis interventions. We work closely with anybody that can help reduce and remove those barriers for people getting treatment. And like I said, when we're setting up to be proactive, we've actually we go out, we validate inpatient and outpatient facilities. We have a facility in Florida. We're validating the second one in California. So if we do have an officer who's in crisis, whether that's mental health, substance abuse, whatever, we can get them into an inpatient facility. And instead of trying to find it or validate it when we need it, we've proactively gone out and actually validated these people. We have procedures in place with a wellness coordinator. TOA will fund the traveling and escort if needed to get the person to that facility. And then we assist with coordinating through their private insurance or other means to pay for that treatment so they can get in there. And again, it's just really about being supportive and removing those barriers. We provide financial support through if an officer falls on hard times or there's something unexpected emergency in their family, we have the funds available through our TOA gives to provide gift cards for food, for assistance maybe in rent or something like that. It's not just here's money. It's like, okay, let's kind of figure out what the problem is. It's a stopgap. Let's get you beyond this and then set you up for success later. There's also a partners in crime group, which is a it's a family support group. It was started up by one of our retired members. And that's just for partners of law enforcement to kind of get together. They share stories, they have meetings, and they kind of talk to each other and work through things from the spousal surprise or the side of it and stuff like that. So we can support them through some of their activities, so they can provide family support. And again, it's just trying to make that. We all know the divorce rates, and we've heard all the stressors and the financial things. So what the TOA is trying to do is just trying to break down and identify those weak spots. And when blind spots are identified because of a bad situation, then we work with the city or state or just anywhere we can actually fix that hole. And it's just really about support and making the members feel valued and working within the city and also state legislator. We're successful. We have one of our board members on the AZ Post board. I've sat in on legislation boards for like the Craig Tiger Act for down at the State Senate House. So we're just very involved through the APA and through other organizations. And again, for us, it's all about support in our association, and just trying to identify those areas where we can do better and just keep plugging those holes. So with that, it's pretty much. I've got a whole bunch. I can answer any questions, obviously, of what we're doing here. And let me just stop sharing the screen, and we'll kind of get back to the the rest of the panel here, and I'll turn everything over to Bryan with fire. He's with Phoenix Fire, and then we'll just kind of go through a little bit of stuff here and answer any questions you guys may have about how we assist and just try to stay in touch with our members and just kind of keep filling those holes.
Hey Chris, thank you for sharing that presentation. Before we switch to Bryan, I see some questions in here that I want to be able to address. But I also have a question for you too, and any of you guys could answer this, of course. But when we were in Connecticut a few months ago, the officers there have this manila envelope packet. It's like kind of, but in case of emergency, if something bad happened, you kind of crack that seal, and what they do is they write down like essentially 13 pages of what's going to go where, what are their account numbers, all of the information that's necessary for their family to continue on if they died in the line of duty, or something happened to them tragically. Do any of your departments do that, or do we use anything like that in Arizona at all? I see Bryan's head shaking forward, so go for it if you guys don't mind answering.
Yeah, well, we strongly recommend they have that like in a home safe. We don't have an actual packet. It's something that probably be very worthwhile to do that. But we've just, and one of our members he came from Washington State, and he brought a form in that we're running through the command right now of a kind of a case of what happens, if we're tragically if it's a police funeral, right? What maybe hymns, who we want to be, Paul Bear, she, whoever the member would want, what's important to them, who they want contacted, who they want to help with that contact list, all those type of things. And we've never had that form before. We've had something kind of similar, but very uh, never really been used. So we're running something similar like that now through the command to see if that's a form or something that we can do to implement in case there's a tragic incident. Now at least we know that what their police final wishes are. But I do like that idea of having, their accounts and everything like that. I mean, hopefully most officers and members are doing something like that. And saw Bryan nod his head. Maybe hopefully fire maybe has something a little better than we do, because sometimes we steal from each other. We're not going to reinvent the wheel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you, Bryan.
Yeah, so the answer is yes and yes. I mean, for most people, I guess we're talking to a lot of law enforcement folks here too. So for us, we have the international as our umbrella, right? So we have the International Association of Firefighters. There's 360,000 firefighters in the United States and Canada, and we all pull from the same resources because, like Chris just said, we don't like to reinvent the wheel. If somebody has a proven product or a methodology that we can utilize and use as a template, we always do that. We have access. Every firefighter in the country, in both the United States and Canada, has the ability to log in with their login for the IFF website. Usually, you have to go through your leadership if you're requesting specific information, but we have shovel ready packets for almost everything, from cancer presumption, for getting industrial processes approved and everything within our own organization. And then if we don't have something within our own organization, we reach out to our state, our PFFA, and then the IFF. So we're very fortunate in that we belong to such an incredibly large organization with so many people that work for the IFF. I mean, we have an entire team that we can rely on that's at our fingertips at any given moment. So yeah, yes, we have it all, and we're very fortunate. We don't take it for granted, but we're always looking for new ideas, and we're always looking to improve. Like Chris, I served 32 years in the fire service. I started in 1991 out in Oakland, California. I worked for Acme Western Ambulance Service, these green and white high top ambulances, because I grew up in the Bay Area, and I worked for Contra Costa County Consolidated. After a brief stint out there, I became a hotshot for a couple years and moved to Arizona, which is where most of my family was, and went through medic school in 1994. Got hired with Rural Metro, and then I came to Phoenix Fire Department in 2000. And it's the same everywhere. Everybody's got the same problems with staffing. I still talk to my old friends. I personally had my own journey with PTSD in 2021, and I heard Patrick make a statement yesterday that really resonated with me. I wasn't the most empathetic person in the world, but After you go through something like that and you're looking down the barrel of a pistol, it changes your perspective. So for all of those, I just wanted to say, for everybody who gave testimony to their personal experience, I think that takes an incredible amount of courage, and I applaud you for it, because if you're in any kind of leadership role, you almost have to. You have an obligation to share your experience. For me personally, I've had my own little series, and I won't get into it because I know we're talking about union stuff, but my wife had triple negative breast cancer. My brother had cancer and then passed away from an overdose. And I have these series of things that piled up on me. But I think it's really critical to acknowledge, don't forget, it's not just the cumulative effects of what happens while you're on the job, whether you are on the job for a year or 32 years. You bring trauma to the table in most cases. Either it's from your childhood, maybe you served in the military, maybe you just had a rough upbringing, whatever it was, you have a cumulative effect from your entire life. And I think it's a really important to acknowledge that. So many people have shared so many stories here. I don't even know where to start, but Chris set the stage, so I don't want to be redundant with what we do in Local 493. So I'll go into a couple other things. For me, it starts with, if you're going to be an effective union or a union leader, and I think this could be germane or applicable to anybody in an administrative role in any leadership position, you have to start with empathy and understanding. And then also, you have to lead with vulnerability. You have to be willing to share your own testimony, to open up those doors and those pathways for other people to express themselves and share their personal experience. Because if you don't, as a leader, that stigma will still exist. I'll tell you how that existed on the Phoenix Fire Department. And to this day, it still disgusts me, but I talk about it openly. We had people that were struggling and suffering in silence, and they were off on leave, and members could look in our telestaff and see that they were off. Okay. And our guys in the field started labeling that, thinking that it was funny. I don't think they were intentionally trying to be mean, but it was. They were calling it the sad pile. It was terrible. It really kept people from raising their hand and coming forward. And we had to put a stop to that immediately. And it took a while to do it because it had spread like wildfire, like everything else does. But in the fire community, we work 2,912 hours in a year. So if you juxtapose that to somebody that works a 40-hour work week, 2,080, we're working over 800 hours more than the average person, right? And a lot of fire stations throughout the country and a lot of fire departments used to be a little bit slower, right? So you would get rest during your shift. We have over 34 trucks on our fire department, the Phoenix Fire Department right now, running over 20 calls a shift now, right? So 4,000 plus calls a year, and it's not sustainable. And we can't add staffing because of the cost of a member or an employee. So these things are all compounding on our folks, and the sleep deprivation seems to be one of the number one drivers with the staffing issues because they're mandatory overtime. It's just compounding our problem. And I think that's happening all across the state and all across the country. So we, like Chris said, we are actively engaged in passing legislation, always looking to fill any gaps in any treatment or resources that we have. We are very fortunate because we have a plethora of resources, and we're constantly trying to obtain more. We have a meet and confer process that's outlined in our city charter that obligates the city to sit down at the table and discuss our needs. Of course, I guess the thing that nobody wants to probably talk about, but it's the case, everything costs money. Counselors cost money. The resources to access ketamine costs money. EMDR therapy costs money. Everything costs money. And when you're going through these struggles in life, you have to understand that's the last thing anybody wants to worry about, is the cost of something, or the cost of something prohibiting them from getting the necessary help that they so need and deserve. But those are challenges for us. So we're always looking to try to find extra money or raise and increase revenue streams or get government assistance and grants and all the other things that locals and unions do. There is a kind of like a stigma also that goes with unions throughout the country, right? We are not the old school union. You just heard Chris talk for a couple minutes, and you can tell We don't rule with an iron fist. We're not out breaking kneecaps. I hate that stigma that goes along with it. We care about our relationships. We understand how budgets and processes work, and we dive into those processes in hopes to uncover resources and vehicles in order to deliver our members the best resources imaginable. And sometimes it's challenging because they cost money. And I don't want to, I could keep going probably for hours, but I'll pause to see if there's questions or concerns about something that I said.
So to answer the question in reference, like information that officers prepare for if untimely and unfortunate incident occurs, the union has, through the assistance of our legal representation, reached out to a couple of organizations that will do the living wills, the trusts, and we kind of lean on that and going through those process. And the organizations, and I'll have to get those information out there, but generally not too heavy on costs. They're kind of mindful about the whole law enforcement component, so there is that. Insofar as how our structure here with the PPOA for Peoria Police Department, we've been, I would say, like in comparison to like Tempe, they're light years ahead of us right now. But we have been moving forward at a better pace. I can tell you from as a good example, without going into too much details, in 2010 there was an officer involved shooting that I was a part of in that incident, and the idea of continued care for the mental health component of that beyond the one session with a psychologist after that was a very, very foreign concept, and it actually created quite a bit of stress in going through that process, in which I partook of, and being off the road for longer than I had anticipated. And then to fast forward to, I would say, easily the last 2 years, but more so even this last year, to see the movement of where we are having better access and a more of attentive care with the department. I have with me actually Lisa Scott, and there she is right there. And she is attached to the wellness aspect of this very subject matter that applies to Peoria, and she's been a stalwart warrior for that, and just and she actually started getting that program built from ground up by herself, just as a line level officer, which is quite a feat when trying to impress upon the admin about the importance of that. And so she has helped bridge that gap insofar as having everybody having a better seat at the table, and not just from an admin perspective, and not to be coming off as disrespectful, but they're generally detached from the road, so they don't have that experience. It's been a while to know, and times have changed. The world has changed dramatically in how we endure and experience things. I would say one of the things on my part from the union aspect, and I'll let Lisa jump in on how bridging that gap with the actual services. I make it a point to, whenever it's particularly with recruits, but even with laterals, to encourage them reaching out when they start feeling it, and not to kind of delay and push on it, to do the kind of the standard, for lack of a way of saying, the machismo type thing, that I'm invincible. But with recruits, I tell them that, because when they endure this job, I always tell people, you're being paid, granted, you're volunteering to do this job, but you're being paid to see your fellow citizens, whether they be victims or suspects, at their worst. And it is a high price that's being asked of us to do that. And we go willfully into those environments, and it does take its toll. And I make no bones about it. I've been telling people that that I actually see Dara. I've been seeing Dara for a better part of a year and a half, and he's endured my comments of long-windedness, and I appreciate that. And but I've always brought it into the union has done it when it comes to IA investigations. The union reps are tasked with making sure not only just to be there for the process of the interviews, but to continuously check on their officer, see how their officer is doing, see if there's any needs from the officer, and to build that relationship. So that way, if they start seeing stressors, especially if it's a process investigation wise that's taking more than 30 days and going and pushing all the way up towards that 180 mark that's in the Bill of Rights for officers, that if there's that stress that's starting to be evident, okay, now let's try to see if they need to get those services available to them, to be that intervention, to be that buffer. You want to dive in on kind of how that works on our end?
Yes, so I run our wellness and peer support team. To be part of our wellness team, you have to go through all the training for peer support. So we have that confidentiality piece. So we have a very good relationship with like the union. And then when we have investigations on our own people, one of the things that's really helpful is usually we call that unit the PSU. Our PSU usually reaches out to peer support and doesn't give us like the details, just say, hey, may want to reach out to this employee. They've just been served in notice of investigation. We'll check in on the employee, and then we make sure that we're also just wearing our wellness and peer support hat. So as we're providing that service, make sure we're giving them support. If they need resources, we're providing those. If there's issues that come up with that investigation or anything like that, we're not going to jump into a rep role. We're going to contact that rep, or we're going to encourage the person to contact that rep and say, hey, here's some questions. This is out of our lane. Can you help this person out? The other nice thing too is our reps do a great job if they are working with somebody and they're noticing, hey, they're really struggling right now. They're super stressed out. They have other stuff going on in their life besides this. They'll reach out to the wellness unit and we'll assign them a peer just to have that peer side. That way they've got their rep that's handling all the details of that investigation and all of that piece. We have the mental health component. We're handling that and making sure they're getting that support. So it's a really nice relationship we have there to make sure people are really getting caught and getting what they need.
And we're continuously moving forward. It's actually one of the topics that we're having with our current negotiations, to kind of bridge some of those gaps insofar as having more transparency with admin and the line as well, to get that understanding that this is a mission that we're taking on as a whole, regardless of what role you are in this organization, and that and essentially kind of making that old adage that we're actually that family, because over time things have changed and people create that division of, well, that's admin and they don't know anything about us, and vice versa, and wanting that to narrow that gap, at the very least when it comes to essentially our humanity and what we endure in this chosen field that we're in. We recently couple investigations already that passed and are current, utilizing the wellness aspect of it, and it's been beneficial, and not everything has run smoothly, but again, we're moving forward and learning as we go and building off of that. And to kind of tag into what Chris was talking about the whole exercising on duty, to burning off that energy to help alleviate some of that stress, and that's something that's actually being addressed on our end, and we're working on the building blocks of that. And so because again, the admin, the city itself has realized that there is a significant merit into that as well for the betterment and the wellness of our officers. And so so that's one of our future projects that we're actually building on right now, and it's got a fairly decent platform to build off of right now. So
yeah, and that's the other thing too. We utilize the union a lot to go to bat for things like that, working out on duty. That's been something that's like huge. People have wanted that for a long time. There's all kinds of studies and science, everything on like physical activity, how it helps in a lot of different ways, mental health wise, stress wise, all of it. So we went to the union to help us to kind of encourage, like, let's try to get some kind of policy. Let's try to do something to get people to be able to work out on duty. We actually started bringing in things that are backed by neuroscience, like yoga. We do yoga classes now, stretch classes, things like that. And the union's been great. They help provide that support for us from the wellness team so that we can bring those type of things to our employees. When you have that union backing too with your wellness group, it's a great partnership. We're able to work together to really get some of the stuff that our employees not only want, but they need for overall wellness too.
So, and that's pretty much the crux of it. A lot of the stuff that's already been said by Bryan and Chris is pretty much going to be mirrored on our end. I will say that I am jealous on Bryan's side about how big of an organization, but the fire department has always been that way. And I don't understand how law enforcement hasn't been able to bridge that gap. And maybe in the future, we'll be able to maybe learn from fire on that end.
Yeah, and I go on what you're saying. One, like PD, law enforcement's usually always so far behind when it comes to what fire benefits or, programs are. My experience in the fire department, living in the station for 24 hours, compared to, we go out, law enforcement go out, you get your briefing, and then you go out on the road by yourself, and you go from call to call by yourself. At most calls you handle by yourself. Whereas in fire, it's just totally, it can be more like a family. I mean, there's always going to be, personalities on trucks and stuff like that. But for the most part, you're with your crew, and that just builds a different bond that you get than you do in law enforcement. I do think law enforcement, the conversation's probably been started, especially with associations like Bryan said. We're not out there trying to, make demands and break kneecaps and all that type of stuff. We're not, that's not, you don't succeed there. In Arizona, being a right to work state, really the association has to go to the agency and the city leadership, and by building those relationships, convince them why it's in their best interest to provide workout time on duty, because we can reduce injuries, we can reduce sick outs, we can reduce, all these things if you remove the stress, staffing. If you're on a squad that's supposed to put 7 bodies out on the street and you're only putting 3 on a consistent basis, that level of stress, even though it may not, feeling of that officer, it just wears them down over time. So if we can do better pay and benefits or hiring bonuses, or money is only a small part of it. It's really the culture that you're trying to build. And the association can only do so much for the pay and benefit side of it. You have to stand out, and that's where the value add comes in. In Tempe, we're trying new and innovative things. We've got a brand new chief that's really focusing on things to move us forward in our culture. And, we want to support the chief so, he can succeed, so we can succeed, so the city can succeed, and we can continue to provide, quality professional police services, with all the other partners. And it all comes down to, I think you said earlier, Bryan, the sleep fatigue, the sleep factor is huge. There's studies on, people that are fatigued are more impaired than people that are on alcohol. So those decision-making process, and then you throw in a high stress, high liability where the officer has to remember, firefighter, whoever it is, they need to make that split-second decision, and they're fatigued, they're worn out, they're overstressed. That's where you get, the excessive use of force. You get the poor decision. Maybe you don't treat the patient on a medical call properly. So there's all those type of things that we're trying to combat through the wellness component. And it's great that the stigma is finally getting broke down. Everybody has their own personal story. And like Bryan said, it doesn't matter if you're one day on the job or 26, 30, whatever. Everything comes back. Saw a question earlier, as far as dispatchers. Right now, our association does not represent dispatchers. I know there's a group of dispatchers that would like to come into the TOA. It's not something that is on our immediate horizon. Wouldn't say it's a never, but it's just, I think they're a missed component, and thankfully they were just added to the Craig Tiger Act to receive benefits, because again, they get to hear the trauma and everything like that, but they don't have their resolution of actually going and putting their hands on it and fixing or coming to a resolution, right? They only hear it. So that's a whole unique trauma, super stressors, and there's such a key component to fire and to law enforcement. And they've probably been, very overlooked as that key component. No different than detention has been overlooked, and the DOC people and stuff like that, they've been overlooked. It's just it's everything, and that's where the association come together. I think in law enforcement, we don't have that huge umbrella. I mean, there's the FOP in Arizona, we have the APA, but we don't negotiate as one. Whereas in the IAFF, I think does a really good job at that. Law enforcement could probably learn from that.
So, Chris, Bryan, I have a question on that then. Just as a follow-up piece, does the IAFF support fire dispatchers under the IAFF?
I'm not sure, every union's a little bit different, in our state or in our local anyways. We're 6 different cities, right? We have Surprise, Peoria, Glendale, Phoenix, Tempe, and Chandler. So they're all within our union. We're an amalgamated union. We have 2,800 people. There's been discussions over the years. They belong to a different union that's represented by the city. We care deeply about our dispatchers. I'll say that. We work with them. I've helped them at times. We've asked them for help at different times. So they're part of our family. And to me, they just like Chris was kind of alluding to, like, I don't care if you're a police officer or dispatcher. I don't care if you work at a hospital. You're part of our family. If you need help from us, that includes Chris and Juan. Like, if you ever need to call us and we can offer something and help you, we will. And I know that that would be reciprocal if we contacted them. There are probably very likely dispatchers included in some unions in the IFF across the country. I don't know any examples off the top of my head, but I can tell you right now, we would never turn somebody away if they need help. That's just the fact. And I hope that everybody has that kind of same mindset. Mental health is plaguing our society. It's gone up exponentially, especially since COVID. We saw a rise of 28% in our EAP program just over the course of less than a year, and it has not stopped. Brianna made a great comment in here, like it should never be about money. And she's 100% right. I don't know, Brianna, but I hope you're okay with me acknowledging your response here. But with regard to our contract, you got to think about it in terms of what do people want, right? We have to represent our entire body. So we throw a survey out when it comes time to contract negotiations. And in that survey, they prioritize what we're going to fight for. And unfortunately, in our city, public safety is 64.2% of our entire budget for the city of Phoenix, right? 15, almost 16,000 employees, 64%. So we have to choose what we spend our money on. I can guarantee you with our city, they care about us. Our city safety sector specifically, they want to give us all that we need for our mental health, especially, but even especially with cancer and all the other things that we are susceptible to being exposed to. But unfortunately, the purse strings are pulled by the politicians and our city management with our city manager. And when we're at the bargaining table, we have to choose what we spend our money on. So if the bulk of your people have never experienced mental health, they're not going to prioritize mental health. And I guarantee Chris and Juan would say the same thing. Most of them think it's BS if they haven't experienced it, unless they have somebody close to them that's experienced it. So they're not going to prioritize it until they've lived it. And then I bet it's number one on their priority list.
And that's absolutely true. I mean, there's, like you said, there's only so many dollars, and until it hits home or until it hits someone that's really close to them, um, I, yeah, it's pay benefits are great talking points. And same like you're supporting Phoenix. Tempe supports us really well. It's been changed. It's been getting better. I've done the last 4 MOUs over with the TOA in the city, and each one. So we took the TOA over in 2009 during the economic downturn, and it's been a struggle to chip back, get some of the pay and benefits back. Things like defined step plan for pay. Again, why is that important? Well, now the officers know when they're going to be reaching certain benchmarks, and it's finally evolved to where now we're able to get some of the additional benefits to focus on the mental health side of it more, because the pay it's like I said, it's only a small component of it. It's the feeling of value, staying connected, that the city can provide, and they show that through the benefits that they can provide as well, and hearing the officers when they ask for things. But again, it comes all back to relationships. If you don't have the relationships, go ahead, bro.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I thought you were done,
No.
but you're right. It's all
Yeah.
about the relationships. The other thing that I think I've heard several times here, and I'm happy to hear it, it warms my heart, is most other organizations are similar to ours. we have people in our own organization that take this stuff into their own hands. We have groups that meet for folks that are going through divorce. They set those meetings up and they run them themselves. We provide the facility. We help them organize that and get it going. We have others that have a mental health group and a cancer support group. Our folks just run with that stuff, and it's ingrained in our culture that, I mean, you can sit around and wait for things to happen or get a budget line item approved, or you can take the bull by the horns and you can take those reins and run with it. And our people are really good about that. And we welcome all kinds of people. There are people that attend some of our meetings that aren't firefighters. They're related to somebody, or they just need help, and we just care about them, and we love them up, wrap our arms around them, and do the best we can with them, or connect them to other resources.